Hi, everybody. This is Jason Frankovitz, and you are listening to or watching Improv Noob, the improv podcast that teaches you about how people learn improv. With me is a very special guest and one of my favorite people in Los Angeles, Rob Michaelson. For those of you who don't know, you are going to know him pretty soon because he's got big stuff afoot. But in the meantime, I'll give you this little summary. Rob is a screenwriter and an actor. He's originally from Chicago, which is in Illinois. His first film is set for release this year, 2020, called Warning. That was shot in Europe, right?
Yeah, in Poland.
Poland, cool. It says here that when no one else is around, you are the smartest guy in the room.
That's true. That is very true.
That's a great claim to fame.
Yeah, it's pretty big. Really inflates the ego.
Thanks very much for talking to me about improv today. This is just one of my kind of favorite questions about improv, is like how people learned it. So when you tell me really briefly kind of what your background with improv is, like where did you study it, how long have you been doing it, that kind of thing.
So I was doing it I've been doing it, although I've sort of taken a break from it, but I was probably doing it for the better part of like 6 or 7 years. And I started in Chicago at Second City, and was doing it there and went through the program there, and then moved out to LA and was in the groundlings for probably about, 4 or 5 years. Obviously with some breaks in between, but yeah, that's kind of the amount. And then took some classes at some odd studios here, but that was kind of the majority of it. Got it.
Okay, cool. So kind of a similar length of time to myself. I've started to lose track at this point, but I'm somewhere around like 7 years or 6 or beginning of 8.
Yeah.
Whatever, roughly the same. So when you were first learning improv, and it sounds like that was at Second City, yeah?
Yeah.
When you were first learning it, did you see a show, or was there an exercise in class, or did you give any type of performance where someone made a move and you suddenly went, oh, that's what that's for, or oh, that's what that does, or that was the perfect choice to make in that moment, in that scene, in that show? I wanted to find out if you had a powerful memory like that of when you first learned something essential about improv.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that I learned that sort of separated sort of either poor or average kind of improv from sort of like really, really enjoyable improv was specificity and recall. And I think not unlike a lot of people that were in Chicago, like at the time, and probably still the case, TJ and Dave were sort of the
big thing,
the bastion, of Chicago improv. So there was like one moment where it was in a show, and I mean, there were countless others, but one that I remember is, they sort of jump through different characters as you do in long form. And, they're going from being like elderly people to, changing genders to coming back and then being like a father and a son and all this stuff. And there was one particular show where the father had sort of turned off the light to tell the child to go to bed. Like, all right, I got to, you got to go to bed, Jimmy, or whatever. And he turns off the light, and it's and he like, pulls the light. They go on to do some other scenes that are like, within this long form, and there are other characters and whatever. And they come back, and the father starts talking again. And Dave is like, I can't see you, Dad. It's dark in here. And then he goes to like flip the switch, and he's like, Dad, well, that light is way too bright. You had the other lamp on. And then, so it's like, everyone starts laughing and clapping, and it just, and instead of like, in this case, TJ or whoever being like, felt like instead of being felt like he was called out or whatever, he just like rolled with it. He's like, I got to get that fixed, or, whatever. It's like, I was like, wow, like the amount of specificity here, and remembering where things were and remembering where the scenes were, and where they left off. And, you know, and then also with kind of like that slight wink to the audience, I was just like, that's sort of incredible. And to really not be sloppy about where things are and who people are and where you leave off scenes. And yeah, that was something that really clicked with me.
That's a great story. I've only seen, well, technically, I think I've seen 2 TJ and Dave shows. One of them was at IO Chicago,
Yeah.
back, you know, before it closed.
Yeah.
And then I saw them perform on a podcast taping of Improv Nerd with Jimmy Carrane. And I know exactly what you're talking about. The ability, and it's really tough when you are doing their kind of show where it's, you know, 2 people and they are doing an entire ensemble cast of characters. Remembering the state of every element in the scene and which character caused that state and which other character perceived the change in that state, whether it's a light switch or the location of a coffee mug or how many bites have been taken out of this bratwurst. That's one of the really delightful things about watching very seasoned improvisers. I mean, for me, when you first said specificity, I thought you were going to talk about like details, like adjectives and proper nouns types of details.
Yeah.
If I'm doing a scene and I'm talking about a street, when I was first starting, I would say like, oh, you know, the street or down the boulevard or something. But now I've kind of built up enough muscle memory to say, oh, you mean at 64th and Hoover? I just picked some streets from when I was a kid growing up. Totally. But that's not the type of specificity that you're talking about that left this impression on you. This is about, you know, attention to like the physical placement and state of the scene itself. And that is a kind of specificity. I never really thought about it that way, but that is just another kind of detail.
You know that there's like, I feel like it, you know, improv brings up a lot of things, you know, your strengths and weaknesses. And for me, like my strength was always being able to add information, like just being very specific about things, but not like the space work and remembering the physical space I'm in and not giving things space. That was a huge weakness of mine. So to see, obviously they're great at everything, but just to see like, oh yeah, remember the dimensions of this lamp, or you know, remember the dimensions of this restaurant, or if you've mentioned something about this thing, like that thing still exists, even though you've obviously, it's a figment, you've created it, but like now it's concretely there. And to respect that, I think was always something that I was like, wow, I really want to get better at that. So yeah, that was such an amazing thing. Cause I saw it in myself and I saw it with other improvisers. It's like, oh, here's a lamp. And it's like, the lamp is like, I mean, it could be like a, you know, like an origami swan for, you know, as loosely as people are doing space work. And it's like, yeah. And so I was like, oh, okay. That's when you're really honing in, it's like, now people are in the space with you and they're really in the space with you, rather than the space being like, just, you know, whatever, who cares?
Yeah. I always, when I think about really good space work, I think about Bob Dassey. And I was at IO West here in Hollywood, and I was watching a quartet show, and they were in like a deli. The scene was in a deli, and he said maybe 20 words in the entire scene, but the whole time he was eating this sandwich. He was eating this like space work sandwich. And I don't know how he did it. It was like a voodoo spell, but I was telling myself, I know what kind of sandwich he's eating.
Yeah.
I know how goopy it is. I know kind of how he's positioning it to get the right kind of bite on it, because this thing is flopping over. Like, I mean, it's just like a silly little mental thing, but it was such a spell that he cast because his specifics about interacting with this object were so complete.
Yeah. And isn't that like kind of the thing where you're like, that sort of separates, I feel like, the sort of like, oh, that's funny, or someone has like good jokes, or they made a nice quip, and then where you're like, oh my god, I'm in the deli with this guy.
Yeah.
Regardless of how funny it is,
Yeah.
I'm literally there with this person.
Yeah.
Or
yeah.
I know this guy, like the way the guy eats, like regardless of what he said, like you said, he only said 20 words, but like now I think for me that was like sort of the biggest like lessons that and growth that I wanted to experience.
That's great. This is a great lesson.
Yeah.
And it's the kind of thing that everyone can always improve. Like, it's not just for masters, it's not just for beginners or intermediate people.
Yeah.
Like, as scenes get more complicated, you need to always set aside a portion of your head to just keep track of how things are and how you left things, so that when you return to them, or when your scene partner returns to them, you can just kind of pick up.
Mm-hmm. And I think another thing too, if I can tell you another lesson, although it's not necessarily connected to a story, but is the power of silence. Like letting things unfold without your need to like say things, I think was a huge lesson for me, because I'm such a big talker. Just letting an emotion occur from silence, like not needing to start the scene with words right away. At least for me, I'm not saying the other person can't, they can do whatever they want, but like so
was there was there a particular scene that you saw, or that you
I mean, it was also
really
another
drove
DJ
that
and
home
Dave
for you?
scene. Yeah, it was another scene, and I don't even remember how it ended, but it was like, a guy and another guy at work, and they were in like the work cafeteria, and like two guys in a cafeteria, sometimes they're not best friends, they don't have a lot to say to each other, but and they're making small talk, but there's so much in the small talk. It's like, there was like, oh, maybe they're sort of like rivals, but they're sort of cordial. Maybe one of, and it's like, maybe one of the guys, it's like really tense, or the other guy got a promotion. Like there was so much in what I loved about some certain stuff that they did is that there's so much in life that is unsaid. And sometimes I think that with improv training, and rightfully so, I understand it becomes a lot about like what is said.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to watch just two people sit there silently on stage. After a while, that's going to be kind of boring. And improvisers tend to be, when you start especially, you're very general. You're like the table, or like you said, the street. But you like Hoover and 42nd now gives you like, oh, that's a numbered street. Maybe that's in a rough neighborhood, whatever. There's things you can glean from it, But I think another part of it is like so much of like our relationships in life are the things that we don't say.
Yeah.
But body language and, all that stuff. And like, and that another lesson from that was also, and other stuff that they would do, and other great improvisers, is like, just the fact that like, not everything needs to be funny.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't have to be melodramatic, but it's like, let a relationship unfurl, and that ultimately the payoff will be the funniest laugh, even if it's not like bada bing, bada boom, joke after joke, because most people in real life aren't as clever as the top improvisers, right? They don't have the sharp statement right away. They won't have that clever thing to say, but those are the people that are most interesting for me to watch on stage, is the people that inhabit people that don't have the thing to say that's the clever thing.
I think that those fit together. I think those go hand in hand. When you are practicing silence in a scene, you are making it possible for something to unfold. You're making it possible to engage in genuine discovery with your scene partner. And I can't tell you how many scenes I've gone into where I'm like, I've got a good one in here, and I have to wait for the right moment to spit it out my mouth hole. And when I've done that, I mean, sometimes that worked out, sometimes that didn't work out. Probably didn't work out more than it did. But those times where we just kind of soak in the pool and just see what happens to the ripples after a few minutes, you come up with stuff organically that you could not fabricate ahead of time on your own in 100 years.
Totally. It's like the the meeting of the minds is so much more powerful than the great idea that you have that you wanted to take somebody on a ride with.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you were like uncomfortable for probably 10 seconds, but through that discomfort, you found something much more glorious than you could have ever imagined by yourself in your own head.
Yeah. And that involves kind of, you know, suspending ego and suspending self-importance. And, you know, just, you know, you can have a few moments of discomfort. It's not going to kill any of us, right? I'm saying that to myself as much as I am to anybody else.
Yeah, for sure.
These are cool stories and great lessons. Thanks, Rob.
Thank you, Jason. It's an honor and a privilege. No,
well,
great.
My guest has been Rob Michaelson. Keep your eyes peeled for his feature film release. Warning, I think it's Warning.
Yes.
It's called Warning, right? And the name of it is Warning.
Warning, yes. It's a warning, and the name is Warning.
Got it. And
warning that warning the movie's coming.
Wow, meta. Does it have a website or a domain that people can look at?
It will at some point. Right now, it's just on various different things. So no, I can't point to one right now.
Got it. At a Google Drive near you.
Yeah, at a Google Drive near you. At a thumb drive.
Okay. Thanks again, Rob, for Improv Noob. This has been Jason Frankovitz, and thanks very much for watching and listening. And we'll see you next time.